If you've been playing hobby games recently, you probably have noticed that there is a trend in hobby gaming towards very strong themes and very strong narratives, towards storytelling, to the point that now very often games have given up on what used to be one of the key values of gaming, which is replay value. And so you have games with very strong stories that, however, have a limited lifespan, because once the plot has been uncovered, the plot twists have been experienced, well, the game cannot give you that boost, the thrill endlessly. And think of Pandemic Legacy, Time Stories. These are good examples of this trend. And now we have another game that follows the same formula or belongs to the same family, which is Choose Your Own Adventure House of Danger. This is basically the board and card game version of an old Choose Your Own Adventure book that, like me, you may have read when you were a kid. House of Danger by R.A. Montgomery. And in retrospect, it only makes sense that as games become more and more narrative and become increasingly similar to game books, then game books become the source of playable experiences. So here we have a cooperative game that follows the general plot of House of Danger, and that can be played solo, can be played by a group of friends, with players taking turns in reading the text that the game mainly consists of, and then making decisions together. There are also some game mechanics, which basically is you will collect items and you will choose when to use them to get certain bonuses on your die rolls, and then you will roll a die when you have to take a test, when you have to take a challenge. Very basic. I'm not going to show you the game because I don't want to give you any spoilers. Actually, just to give you a sense of the game mechanics, all I need to do is to show you the back of the box. The game comes with a deck of cards, and the cards are numbered, and they pretty much are the equivalent of the pages. You read the text on the card and says, if you want to do this, go to card 28, otherwise go to card 14. Oh, collect clue 4. So there are two decks of cards. One is the main cards and one is clues, which are items that you collect, but also other things. I'm not going to give you a spoiler there. As for the game mechanics, you have a board of which you see a section here with a track around it and another track here. This track represents your psychic power, your intuition and stuff like that. Pretty much when you do stuff that advances the story and you're successful, you will increase your standing on that track. You will score points on that track. And I hope it's not too much of a spoiler if I tell you that the amount of psychic points that you have at the end will determine your level of success. And then you have this danger track here. And you can see there's number 5 written on several of those things. Basically, in lower spaces of that track, you have lower numbers such as 333, 444, 555, and so on and so forth. There's a cube that goes on one of those spaces, and that represents the level of difficulty of a standard challenge. So take a challenge in this or that ability, in this or that skill. You roll a d6 and you pass the challenge if you roll that number or higher, and you may have items that help you with this type of test or with that type of test. If you roll a natural 1, it's always a failure, no matter what kind of items you were using. If you fail, usually the penalty is that the danger increases, and when the cube gets to the top, then you get a penalty here in psychic points, and the cube goes down the track back to 3. So this is pretty much the general idea. You will make decisions following the story tree, exploring this House of Danger, and you will take tests. Some are mandatory, some are optional. And well, you see where you go from there. Now, as for the story itself, I read the book back in the day, and it's by Montgomery. Now, if you are a fan, such as myself, of the Choose Your Own Adventure series, you certainly remember Montgomery. Together with Edward Packard, he's one of the 2 most important authors of the series, also one of the co-founders of the entire range. And Montgomery is well known among people that like choose your own adventure books for his unique vision, for his vision of what you say parallel universe, inconsistent reality. Inconsistent here I say in a technical term, not in a negative term. That is, as you make decisions and you go in different branches, these branches are incompatible. They don't belong to the same universe, which could be, Packer, for example, tends to be more a simulationist. That is, the decisions that you make are the only thing that changes in the fictional universe. I'll give a fictional example that I just made up so I don't have any spoilers. Say, to give a sense of the inconsistent approach of Montgomery to the story. Suppose the phone is ringing and can you pick it up? You can pick it up or not. You pick it up, is your Aunt May that is calling to say hi. Fine. You don't pick it up. Later in the day, in this alternative branch, you are told that Aunt May died 2 days ago. So those two events simply cannot happen in the same universe. Another thing that Montgomery is known for is a certain mysticism. In almost all of his books, as I can recall, there's at least one plot in which the protagonist has some sort of like enlightening experience, some sort of mystical intuition. Sometimes you dissolve in light, you see the music of the universe, you transcend to a higher plane of existence. You make contact with a higher intelligence to the point that you realize how petty and irrelevant your previous life was. Pretty much you get this sense of, again, of transcending your knowledge, your senses, your emotions, etc., etc., which to me has a certain Buddhist quality to it. Now, I'm not an expert in Buddhism, but it seems to me like if somebody wanted to write a book for children with a representation of the theme of Buddhist intuition, moving to the next plane of understanding, probably that's how it would be done. Is there such a thing in here? I don't know, but I do know because I played the game, but I'm not gonna tell you. I'm just telling you, if you know Montgomery, this is one of the things that you may expect. House of Danger. In the original book, as in here, you, the protagonist, are this like young aspiring detective. You receive a mysterious phone call. You're summoned to the House of Danger. This is a very strange house, and you explore it, and different things happen. Now, in the book, it's perfectly normal that there's a single protagonist because you have a single reader, you identify with that one. Here, the text is still written in the second person, second singular person. You do get the sense that there's one protagonist, but of course, if you have a group of friends playing, it may be a little bit weird that you're all controlling this puppet because you're all the same person. Also, what kind of person this is kept vague, like it was vague in the original book. It is gender neutral, so that makes it more friendly to different types of players. But you get the sense that it's a young fellow, and it's a young, inexperienced, promising fellow. Again, typical of the Choose Your Own Adventure books. You can imagine anybody between 12 and 17-year-old, I guess. Which, of course, probably now that you're an adult, picking up this game as for nostalgia value or because you like games that tell stories, well, the identification clearly is not nearly as strong as it used to be. Another thing is that these days we have many games that have the strong narrative component, and usually they're games for adult hobbyists with that kind of theme, with that kind of tone, darker, some violence, adventure, etc., etc., etc. The old Choose Your Own Adventure books, again, were geared for readers between 6 and 10-year-old. I still read them, but that's just me. And so there were situations that when I read them back in the day, I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. In retrospect, some 30 years later, some of those things look very campy, very weird, very strange. Right? I smile. And that's pretty much the only reaction you can have when some of the stuff comes across the page, comes at you when you're an adult. And this book is faithful, the game is faithful to the book in that sense. There's some stuff that really clearly comes out of children's literature, like, whoa, that weird thing happens. completely unprepared, and then sort of like forgot, and the protagonist completely seems to ignore that incredible thing that happened, and whoa, this other crazy stuff happens. There's weirdness in it. What I'm trying to say is that if you're not familiar with the Choose Your Own Adventure series and you're just expecting a new pandemic legacy, you're just expecting a new time stories, you will not find the sense of gravity, that sense of intensity. It is a fun ride in a carnival that's geared mainly towards children or nostalgic adults. So there is that caveat about the atmosphere, about the tone, about the kind of encounters that you will find. Something that I like also is that there is a limited number of crazy instant deaths. So you need some of those to spice things up and keep the story interesting, but not like too many like in some Choose Your Own Adventure books, so it just gets frustrating. And the interesting thing is that death is not the end. There isn't that idea that if you die, you had to start from the beginning, which very few people did anyways. You're just told, go back to the previous card. And in here, actually, there's something interesting to me that happened importing the story from the medium of the book to the medium of basically a deck of cards paired with a board. Because if you read this old Choose Your Own Adventure books, and everybody did it, and the same for other game books, you probably would keep several fingers stuck among the pages to be able to retrieve previous patches. In case you died, then you go back to the previous bifurcation when you made the wrong choice, and then you explore something else. And sometimes it's because you don't want to die, sometimes just out of curiosity, I really want to see what happens if I open that door instead of that door. And precisely because of this, very often when you die, you just, with your box, you just went back to the previous divergence, not to the very beginning. Now, the idea is still the same. Actually, now finally it has been made explicit. Just go back to the previous choice. But what I like here is with the medium of the cards is that you don't have to keep track of that. You don't have to keep fingers anywhere. Because basically you read a card, and when you move to the next one, that goes in a discard pile. And then I read card, say 38, we make a decision, we put it down, we go to 59, and we go to 64, and we go to 7. When we want to go back, then the discard pile has all of the cards, all of the pages that we experience in the right order. So it makes it much easier to go back and try alternative paths and explore things a bit more. As I said, once you reach one ending, the replay value is going to be limited because all the significant endings tends to be towards the end, and you can go back and look for an extra item that you missed to see what happened if you did this or that thing. So the good thing is that the replay value is limited, but if you do want to replay the adventure and you don't want to start from the beginning, it's very easy to go back, and simply because of the order of the cards in the discard pile, it's easy to reconstruct the tree and figure out where are the narrative paths that you haven't explored yet. That's a considerable advantage. In fact, at the beginning I was like, well, what is the point of turning them into cards? It seems gimmicky, but that to me is a considerable advantage. Now, of course, different from an old book that you could read on a bus, you could read while you're waiting for the bus, you could read it while you're standing on the bus. You could read a book about a bus. I don't know what I'm talking about, but you could read it anywhere. Of course, here you need a surface, you need a table where you can roll dice and place the cards. But definitely there are advantages in the transformation of the book into a deck of cards. On top of the fact, of course, that now the game is explicitly multiplayer. And again, retrospectively, I'm like, but the old books already were. I could have done almost the same that I did here with the old book. We simply read a page out loud, and then you read a page out loud, and then we gave the book to our friend and read a page out loud. But then also, again, yeah, you have a little bit of game mechanics thanks to the die rolls and the items to use. So that adds a little bit of complexity and makes it a little more gamey, and again, not just simply and purely narrative. So in general, I liked it. I played it solo, I enjoyed it, I spent a nice fun couple of hours, mainly because of nostalgia, mainly because I wanted to compare my memories of the book with what I found here. If you haven't read the original book, again, in a certain sense, it's really like a carnival going to not exactly a horror tunnel or just one of those crazy attractions where weird stuff happens. As an adult, there's stuff in here that will strike you as unabashedly, unapologetically strange and weird, even bizarre. You have to be in the right spirit, get along with the line, enjoy the storytelling in the sense of really you get the sense that the author is just enjoying telling you these crazy things that happen to you. Don't take it too seriously because then you'll be disappointed. This is not Gloomhaven. This is not Pandemic Legacy. It is a story that was designed for children that now can be played also by adults and can be played in a playable format. So make sure that all of your friends are on the same page, or you play it solo and you know what to expect, and then I think you can have a really good time. House of Danger, Choose Your Own Adventure, the game version. I hope we'll get more actually. There are a couple of ones that I have in mind that I really hope they're gonna translate into this format. And in general, recommend it. If you like games with a strong story, if you like game books, give this one a try because it's a fun ride.